Hi guys, my name is Matti Sulanto and I'm a photographer. And in this video I'd like to celebrate one specific camera that became 10 years old this year, just a couple of months ago. And that camera has a very special place in my heart. And that camera is of course the Olympus E-M1, the first one. With this camera I have taken some of my best pictures. This was also my first so-called professional micro four thirds camera. Not this particular camera. This belongs to my good friend Robin Wong, who very kindly lended me his little bit battered E-M1 so I can make this video and celebrate this camera. In this video I'm going to share some of my old pictures that I've shot over the years with this camera and explain my history with this camera. I had been using micro four thirds since the beginning, since the Lumix G1. And before this I had two Olympus EM5s, and I also liked those cameras a lot, and I shot a lot of customer work and personal work with those EM5s. And then in 2013 I was privileged enough to be invited to the launch event of the EM1 in Ireland. It was a pretty big time event. We had a lot of fun there and also got to test the new EM1 thoroughly. And right after the event I bought two of these and I loved them a lot, and I shot a lot of excellent pictures on these cameras for both myself and for my clients. Now that I'm holding this camera, it feels like getting back together with an old friend after a long time. I haven't been shooting on this camera for several years, and I haven't even been holding it in my hands for several years. It feels good. These were great cameras, but interestingly enough, these two cameras, the cameras that I owned, were also two of the very few cameras that I have ever had to send out for a repair. One camera body had a faulty rear dial, and both cameras had a crack in the rear screen bezel. And both of those issues were common for these cameras. The screen issue had no effect on the camera functionality, but I wanted to have it repaired just in case I sometime in the future want to sell the camera. Both issues were fixed under warranty, so not a big deal. Anyway, those were the days. Happy times. Olympus EM1 was the best mirrorless camera at the time, and micro four thirds was the best mirrorless system. But the competitors were already lurking behind the corner. In the same year, 2013, Sony also released their very first full-frame A7 series cameras. Those first Sony A7 cameras were pretty rudimentary, and they were no threat to this very sophisticated, at the time, EM1. But it was easy to see what was coming, and it was easy to see how small a full-frame camera body also could be. Fuji was also setting up their X-series lineup, but Canon and Nikon were doing nothing significant in mirrorless back then. Now in hindsight, I think I was not so much in love with micro four thirds. The sensor size was secondary to me. I was more in love with the best mirrorless system and the best mirrorless camera at the time, the EM1. Olympus and micro four thirds had so many advanced features compared to DSLRs that were still very common back in the day. And I simply loved also the mirrorless concept right from the start. But in 2015, when the Sony A7R Mark II came out, it started to look like full frame might again make sense. There was no significant weight or size penalty for my work, because I did not use, or still don't use, long, heavy super telephoto lenses. And the superior image quality offered some benefits in post-processing, a little bit of cropping maybe, and for occasional mistakes. Of course, I never make mistakes, but just in case I happen to make a mistake someday. And sometimes my client also wanted big prints, I mean really big wall-sized prints. And with 42 megapixels, I never had to worry about that anymore. Not that I ever really had serious image quality issues with the Micro Four Thirds or the E-M1, but when you are doing client work and you can never be sure what the client wants afterwards, after the shoot, it's good to have a little bit like extra tolerance in your image files. Now when I look at the state of Micro Four Thirds and Olympus, it seems to me that as soon as the competitors got their act together, Micro Four Thirds and Olympus kind of lost it. To the point that Olympus didn't even want to make cameras anymore. The competitors caught up and pulled ahead. Of course, Micro Four Thirds still is as good as it ever was. But there is no significant advantage anymore. All those features, advanced features that used to be exclusive to Micro Four Thirds, they are now in every camera and every system, pretty much. And Micro Four Thirds once was the leader, but now they are in the bottom. And it's kind of sad, and it shows how hard the competition is. Today, the only benefits that Micro Four Thirds can offer for some photographers is the size and weight. But not everyone wants the smallest camera or the smallest lenses, and often also the smallest possible camera is not the best. I think this size, the size of the E-M1 or something like this, is just about the right size ergonomically if you are doing some, let's say, serious photography. Those tiny Micro Four Thirds cameras or other tiny cameras, they can be nice for some sort of photography, but they are often also ergonomically quite poor and a heavy compromise in that sense. Anyway, the Olympus E-M1 still has a special place in my heart, even though I don't own these cameras anymore. But back in the day, it was the best mirrorless camera and it was the best mirrorless system. And I shot so many memorable, great pictures on my two E-M1 cameras. Now that I've been using this E-M1 after so many years, it still feels good in my hand. Very robust, solid, and certainly very professional quality camera. The viewfinder is surprisingly good even today. However, the autofocus is not up to modern standards anymore. In low light, it struggles clearly compared to any modern camera. And it's so funny because back in the day, the autofocus felt so good, like blazingly fast, super good and reliable. But now when I compare it to any modern camera, I realize right away, yeah, I don't have to even make any side-by-side comparisons. I realize right away that it's not as good as it felt back then. But then again, it was 10 years ago, and especially autofocus has gone so many steps forward since then. This is all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed these thoughts on Micro Four Thirds and this little trip down the memory lane with the Olympus E-M1, the first one. If you enjoyed, please do consider buying me a cup of coffee. There's a link down below for that if you don't live in Finland. Thank you so much, and I'll definitely see you again in the next one.